What would you do if your HOA fined you $70,000 for fixing a road they didn't even own? I sat there in that meeting room, listening to the HOA president rant about my so-called violations, knowing something she didn't. Everyone in that room, including her, had been driving across my land for years. My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm 52, and I moved into Pine Ridge Meadows in 2019 after a messy divorce left me needing a quiet place to restart my life. I bought a small ranch house with a long porch and big oak trees in the yard. The main road into our neighborhood was a narrow, winding strip called Cedar Trail Road, the only way in or out of the subdivision. I thought I was buying peace and fresh air. I didn't know I was walking into a small-town war. At first, the neighborhood felt friendly. People waved from driveways, kids rode bikes along the sidewalks, and the place smelled like fresh-cut grass and backyard grills. But things changed fast around the time Linda Carver moved in. She was 48, a real estate agent who acted like our neighborhood was a luxury resort she personally owned. She wore big sunglasses even indoors, drove a spotless black SUV, and walked around with a clipboard tucked under her arm like some kind of commander. Her husband, Mark, was a tax lawyer who always looked tired, like he'd been apologizing for her all morning. Linda called herself the, quote, community standards director. Nobody else used that title, but she did. She measured people's grass with an actual ruler. She fined an elderly veteran because his American flag was, quote, too large. She took pictures of trash cans that were 6 inches out of alignment. She even yelled at kids for drawing chalk cartoons on their own driveways. The woman lived for control. The real fight started in spring of 2024 after a brutal winter tore Cedar Trail Road apart. The potholes were so deep a kid could hide in them. When cars drove over the road, the whole street rattled with metal scraping against pavement. Folks cursed every morning on their way to work. One of the older neighbors, Mrs. Lee, almost twisted her ankle trying to get her mail. I could hear the crunch of broken asphalt under my boots every time I stepped on the road. I'm a retired civil engineer. I know when a road is failing, and this one was failing fast. I emailed the HOA board. I offered to help coordinate repairs. I even attached sketches and basic cost estimates. Linda emailed back in less than an hour. Her tone was cold and sharp, like she was scolding a child. All modifications require board approval and certified contractors. Do not attempt unauthorized repairs. 6 weeks passed. No meeting, no plan, no repairs. Cars kept getting damaged and everyone was sick of the mess. So I did something simple. I fixed the worst potholes myself. My buddy Tom, a contractor who always smelled faintly of diesel and black coffee, came over with his crew. We worked 2 full days filling, packing, and sealing the ugliest parts of the road. It cost me $3, $200 from my own pocket. But the road was safe again. Neighbors thanked me. Some even offered to chip in. For the first time in months, Cedar Trail Road was quiet and smooth under your tires. But the moment I posted the before and after photos in our neighborhood group, things exploded. 2 days later, a certified letter slapped against my porch with a heavy thump. I opened it and smelled that familiar scent of printer ink and stale office paper. The HOA had issued a cease and desist order. According to Linda, I'd committed unauthorized infrastructure modification. They fined me $500 immediately and $200 per day until I returned the road to its original condition. Original condition? You mean the hazard that looked like the surface of the moon? At the emergency HOA meeting Linda called on a Tuesday afternoon, she had a full presentation ready. She stood behind the podium under a flickering fluorescent light that hummed like an angry bee. She wore her oversized sunglasses even though we were indoors, and she clicked through slides like she was presenting a criminal case. Red arrows, bold letters, dramatic warnings about liability exposure. She didn't even call me by name. She just pointed at me with this stiff plastic smile. This resident has endangered our community. People shifted in their chairs. Some nodded along. Others looked embarrassed. The air felt tight and thick, like the room was holding its breath. I stayed calm. I brought real engineering reports, real measurements, real photos. I explained everything. My work exceeded county standards. I wasn't trying to break rules. I was trying to keep people safe. Linda didn't care. She doubled the fines, then doubled them again. She even introduced a rule that all future road repairs had to be done by one approved contractor, a guy who happened to be her husband's golf buddy. My daughter Emily, who was 17 and smarter than I'll ever be, helped me put together a PowerPoint showing how Linda's engineering report had been written by her brother-in-law, who worked in landscaping, not engineering. When we showed that slide, the room gasped. 3 board members quit right there, but Linda rebuilt the board in a week with her wealthy friends and pushed even harder. She started driving past my home every day, slowing down, taking photos. The soft whir of her SUV window rolling down became a sound I couldn't escape. I installed cameras. I documented everything. And the more I documented, the more I saw her playing favorites. Her friends had the same violations she fined others for. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was enforcing control. My fines hit $8, $500, and grew by the day. The smell of tar from my road repairs faded, but the bitterness in my chest stayed. Then one evening, everything changed. Mrs. Lee knocked on my door, her hands trembling, a tray of warm cookies in her grip. Vanilla and butter filled the air as she stepped inside. "I think you should see something," she whispered. She had every HOA document from the neighborhood's early years, and what I found inside those papers. Well, that was the beginning of the end for Linda Carver. The night Mrs. Lee handed me that old cardboard box, I had no idea my entire world was about to flip upside down. The box smelled like dust, old paper, and the kind of history people forget until it matters. We sat at my kitchen table under the warm, yellow light, cookies between us, and she pushed her glasses up with slow, careful hands. "These are from when my husband helped form the original HOA," she said. "You might find clarifications." Clarifications was an understatement. Inside were every covenant, every amendment, every meeting minute from 1983 onward. The papers were yellowed at the edges, the ink faded, but they were clear enough. And within an hour of reading, my heart started pounding so hard I had to grip the edge of the table. Almost every rule Linda used to harass people, never legally approved. Never voted on. Not even close. She'd been running the HOA like it was her personal kingdom. But that wasn't the real bomb. The deeper I dug, the stranger it got. Whole sections about road ownership were missing from later documents but clearly existed in the originals. There were handwritten notes from the founding board, references to reserved parcels, and mentions of private easements that didn't line up with the current HOA map. My engineering brain kicked in. Something wasn't adding up. The next morning I drove to the Pine County Recorder's office, a place that smelled like old books, coffee, and slow-moving bureaucracy. The clerk behind the counter had thick glasses and a stack of files taller than her head. She typed with 2 fingers, each key press sounding like a miniature hammer. "I'm looking for property records for Cedar Trail Road," I told her. She frowned. "The road? People usually ask for houses." "Yeah, I know." She dug for nearly 20 minutes, each drawer sliding open with a dry metallic scrape. Then she pulled out a dusty folder and gave me a strange look. "This one hasn't been requested in years." Inside were the original development maps from the 1980s. And that's when I saw it. Bold black letters across the top. Cedar Trail Road, Private Access Road. Owner, Brooks Development, LLC. Brooks. My last name. My uncle's old company. I felt my hands go cold. My breathing turned shallow. I flipped page after page, tracing the ownership transfers. In 2001, when my uncle dissolved the company and liquidated assets during a bankruptcy, several properties transferred to his name individually. Cedar Trail Road was one of them. When he passed away, his assets went to the only surviving family member, me. I didn't just maintain the road, I owned it. Every inch of pavement, every car that drove over it, every delivery truck, every school bus, every fancy SUV in Linda's driveway, all of them were crossing my property. I left the courthouse in a fog. The cool air outside felt sharp, like everything was suddenly too clear. I sat in my truck gripping the steering wheel, trying to understand how the HOA had been fining me for maintaining a road that legally belonged to me. I didn't tell anyone right away. I needed confirmation, so I drove straight to a real estate attorney whose office smelled like leather and expensive coffee. She examined the documents with sharp, focused eyes. "Daniel," she said, tapping the deed with her pen, "you own that road, completely. The HOA never had any authority over it." I leaned back in my chair. The room spun slightly. "So all these fines? Completely invalid. And all the years they used the road. They've technically been using your private property without a maintenance agreement." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream, but I didn't rush home to confront Linda, because she was about to hand me something much better. Later that week, she served me with a notice claiming my fines were now over $25,000 and climbing daily. She scheduled another emergency HOA hearing and invited the local news to cover it. The envelope smelled like her usual lavender perfume and self-importance. She was bragging online about finally putting the troublemaker in his place. She thought she'd won. Meanwhile, I had a private road deed, a real estate attorney, and a surveyor marking boundaries with bright orange flags that fluttered in the breeze like warning signals. I stayed quiet, let her talk, let her dig the hole deeper. The next HOA meeting was the biggest one yet. The room buzzed with tension. You could hear every whispered comment, every squeak of plastic chairs on the floor. Linda strutted in wearing her huge sunglasses and carrying a binder thick enough to be a college textbook. Mark trailed behind her looking like he wanted to disappear into the wall. She launched into a 20-minute speech about dangerous residents and illegal activities. Her voice got sharper with each slide she clicked through on her PowerPoint. She waved rulers, photos, paperwork, anything to make herself look powerful. People looked uncomfortable. Some shifted in their seats. The air smelled like stale coffee and stress. When she finished, she smirked at me. "Do you have anything to say?" she asked, "before we vote on escalating your fines and beginning lien procedures?" I stood up slowly, feeling the entire room watching me. My heart thumped in my chest, but my voice stayed calm. "Yes," I said, "I do." I walked to the front of the room carrying a long, rolled-up document. The news camera whirred softly as it zoomed in. I unrolled the map across the table. A county-certified property survey. There was a long, heavy silence. "This," I said, pointing to the bold black outline, "is Cedar Trail Road, and according to county records, I'm the legal owner." "You could have heard a pin drop," someone in the back gasped. One guy leaned so far forward his chair squeaked. The county official in attendance stepped up, examined the documents and nodded. "This appears to be valid." Linda's face went white underneath her spray tan. For the first time since this war started, she had nothing to say. And the night was only getting started. The moment the county official confirmed my ownership of Cedar Trail Road, the entire room shifted. It felt like the air changed temperature. People leaned forward in their seats. A few whispered. Someone muttered, "Are you kidding me?" under their breath, but the only person who didn't move a muscle was Linda Carver. She stood frozen behind that podium, her oversized sunglasses hiding eyes I knew were darting around behind the dark lenses. Her mouth pressed into a thin, hard line. Her knuckles went white on the edges of her binder. I stayed calm. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I didn't have to. "The HOA," I said slowly, "has been fining me for maintaining my own property. And every resident here has been using this road for years without any kind of maintenance agreement. But I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to fix a problem." I saw shoulders soften. A few people nodded. Even the sheriff's deputy shifted his stance like he'd finally figured out who the real problem was. Then, Linda snapped out of her trance. "This is fraud!" she shouted. Her voice cracked. "You forged those documents! He forged them! This is a scam to extort the neighborhood!" The desperation in her tone filled the room like static. The county official shook his head. "Ma'am, the survey matches our records on file." That hit her harder than anything I could have said. Linda's jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles pulsing in her temples. Her husband, Mark, tugged at her elbow like he was trying to gently guide a grenade out of the room. But Linda wasn't backing down. "This doesn't matter," she hissed. "The community has established use rights. We don't need his stupid road. We'll build another one." The county official sighed. "Ma'am, the subdivision is surrounded by private farmland. There are no available easements. Building a new access road would require buying land from at least 3 separate owners and securing environmental approval. That process would take years and cost millions." Millions! The word hung in the air. Someone in the back laughed under their breath. Not mean, just disbelieving. Linda's face turned red. Then, purple. She slammed her binder shut so loudly that a toddler in the front row jumped. "You won't get away with this," she screamed at me. "I will sue you and anyone who helps you. You are trying to take this neighborhood hostage." I didn't respond to her. I addressed the room. "I'm offering a simple solution," I said. "A road cooperative, $40 a month per household. Transparent accounting. Professional maintenance. And you get a safe, well-kept road without any of the drama." People murmured. The tension in the room was loosening, until Linda lost whatever grip she had left. She stepped toward me, pointing her finger inches from my face. "You are nothing but a con artist," she shouted. "You are lying to destroy this community." The sheriff took one slow step forward. Her husband covered his eyes with one hand, and then Mrs. Lee, quiet, gentle, jasmine perfume-wearing Mrs. Lee, stood up. "Linda," she said in a soft but firm voice I'd never heard from her, "you have bullied this neighborhood long enough." The room went dead silent. "You fined me for my rose garden," she continued. "You threatened to tow my grandson's car. You left people afraid to live here. Daniel repaired the road to help us, not hurt us." More neighbors stood, one after another. "Linda, you fined my kid for chalk drawings. You cited me for mailbox numbers. You reported my dog for barking once. You threatened my husband over holiday lights." The floodgates opened. People who'd been terrified to speak finally let it all out. Their voices filled the room with weeks, months, and years of fear and resentment. Some were shaking. Some almost cried. Others were simply relieved to finally say the words out loud. And Linda? She stood there trembling with rage, but she couldn't stop the wave. The final blow came from her husband. "Linda," he said quietly, "you need to stop." Her head whipped toward him like he'd just betrayed her kingdom. But he didn't flinch. "This isn't the community I want to live in anymore," he said. She stared at him with wild eyes. Then she grabbed her binder, shoved past 3 people, and stormed out of the meeting so violently that the door smacked the wall behind it. The echo lingered like the closing chapter of a long, exhausting book. The room exhaled. People turned to me. "So, about that cooperative?" someone asked. "We got to work right there. 35 households signed up in the first week. 8 more joined later. Only Linda's small circle refused. But in the end, it didn't matter. The cooperative launched officially a month later. We hired a professional maintenance crew. They patched, sealed, and cleaned the road until it looked better than it had in decades. The smell of fresh asphalt replaced the scent of old potholes and crumbling gravel. The HOA called an emergency election. Linda was removed from the board by an overwhelming majority. Her husband quietly resigned from his law firm after an ethics investigation found hidden kickbacks from HOA enforcement actions. They sold their house in silence and moved 2 states away. Life in Pine Ridge Meadows changed almost overnight. Kids drew chalk art again. Neighbors waved from driveways. People talked, laughed, helped each other. And every time I drove down Cedar Trail Road or saw Mrs. Lee watering her roses without fear of a citation, I remembered one simple truth. Bullies only win when good people stay quiet. I didn't plan to be anyone's hero. I just wanted peace. But standing up to Linda gave my neighborhood something bigger. A community again.